Delegate, thank you so much for coming on the program today. It's really good talking with you.
Yes, glad to do it. Lots to talk about.
Absolutely. First question, I've just got to ask. I mean, what is your reaction to hearing the governor say that counties are going to face consequences if they don't comply with unconstitutional gun laws? Representative Donald McEachin suggesting that the National Guard needs to be called out to these Second Amendment sanctuary counties?
Yeah, it sort of just leaves me speechless, and quite literally, as you can tell by my reaction. I mean, the notion that that any of that is going to happen is just insane in light of the sea change in public policy that they're just trying to enact overnight. That on the books right now, the way it stands would make felons out of countless tens of thousands of Virginians, hundreds of thousands potentially, and then double down on it with threats of the National Guard and so forth, and consequences for law enforcement officers who don't enforce the law. All of those threats, the doubling down is just baffling. Instead of recognizing the very legitimate concerns going on throughout Virginia that are being played out pretty much on a daily basis, county by county, as these Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions are enacted with hundreds and even thousands of people showing up at those events, rather than recognizing that legitimate concern and that energy and that very much organic coming together of citizens, law-abiding citizens, for what it is, and maybe saying, whoa, maybe we need to revisit what we're getting ready to do. Instead, they're kind of doubling down, and that's disconcerting.
It absolutely is. I mean, and in the legislature, we've already seen a number of bills pre-filed. I know Governor Northam says that Senate Bill 16, which was filed by Senator Dick Saslaw, currently does not contain a grandfather clause. If you possess a gun that the state is going to ban, you would not be allowed to keep that gun legally. Northam says, well, we're going to introduce a grandfather clause in there, as if that makes it better. Delegate Gilbert, that those who currently possess these firearms, okay, well, maybe they can register their guns with the state and keep them, but everybody else is going to have their rights infringed.
Yeah, that's where the rub is, isn't it? You can keep your guns as long as you register them with the good old Commonwealth of Virginia. I just think the places where they have tried that, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think the places where they have tried registration as sort of a half measure, you just don't see any compliance, and rightfully so. I mean, people don't want to comply with what they view as an infringement of their God-given natural rights, and especially their constitutionally protected rights. I just think that was a way maybe to placate the masses that we see showing up at these events, these rallies, these meetings, to say, oh, you can keep your guns as long as you just register them. That's still going to leave countless tens of thousands of people in a position of having to choose whether to be a criminal or register their guns. And I know what most people showing up at these events are going to choose to do. Absolutely.
And I think New York State, when they passed the SAFE Act back in 2013, last I saw, the compliance rate for registering the quote-unquote assault weapons was about 5%. As you say,
right.
And this is really, I think, the rub here. I mean, the representative could talk about sending in the National Guard, and the governor could talk about consequences for counties that don't enforce measures that they believe are unconstitutional. But at the end of the day, ultimately, you and legislators, you make laws, but it's up to law enforcement officers to enforce those laws. And each and every day in jurisdictions across the state of Virginia, you've got officers and sheriffs and chiefs who are using discretion to decide whether to issue somebody a citation, a ticket, let them off with a warning. You got prosecutors deciding whether or not to bring cases or not. I mean, that's already happening in the state of Virginia. But according to the governor, for what it sounds like, no discretion would be allowed when it comes to enforcing these gun laws.
Right. Well, the political left has made some inroads in areas of law enforcement here in Virginia recently. I think there have been some, and I say this is quite literally the case, George Soros-backed prosecutors who have won election in urban areas in Virginia. I'm thinking of at least 3, and they were quite open about the fact that they weren't going to enforce certain laws, namely marijuana laws and other things that they just were going to choose not to enforce. And they were hailed by the left as, being on the edge of progressivism. And you didn't see any of the governor threatening any of those folks with taking them out of their jobs or bringing in the attorney general to prosecute cases instead of them. But, something like this where we're talking about a constitutional right, not even something that's an issue of state policy or not, but where state policy is about to run afoul of our United States Constitution. And all of a sudden, we have to come in and, fire all the police and replace all the prosecutors who won't enforce it. I just think, they're really setting themselves up for a very bad outcome in terms of dividing Virginia into really two Virginias. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to see that. And I think, if you look at the map of Virginia counties that have adopted these Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions, it is a sea of green in the contrasting map that I keep seeing online, where each county that adopts it is replaced with a shade of green. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all of rural Virginia is going to have these protections, or at least that their counties are standing with their citizens in whatever way, whether it's symbolic or substantive, that they're standing with them, and those counties now kind of feel ruled over by Northern Virginia, basically, and letting Northern Virginia decide, what's good for all the rest of us in terms of how we choose to protect ourselves and our families. And I think, the governor still has time to see that we are headed for a pretty disastrous outcome in terms of just pitting these two areas against each other, and he can reconcile all that if he chooses to. I'm not saying he's going to walk back his thoughts on guns and gun control generally, but as far as overreach, he can certainly avoid that still.
He can, if he chooses to do so. But again,
right.
As you've said, it doesn't look like there's any indication that that he's considering that. Meanwhile, we as you say, we've seen these thousands of individuals show up at county meetings. I was in Cumberland County the other night. There were about 600 people, standing room only, in the elementary school cafetorium. I think Rockbridge County had 3,000 individuals crammed into the high school gym there. I mean,
I think that was Rockingham, but yeah,
Rockingham,
absolutely. And then another 3,000 standing outside who couldn't get in, apparently.
Have you ever seen anything like this in your time?
Never. And again, that is the real wake-up call here for Virginia Democrats and for the governor. That they have, as the old adage went in the Second World War, they have awakened a sleeping giant, and we are seeing people that we've never seen politically active show up to these events. Mm-hmm. People who've never, we are registering new voters at these events. Folks that may have sat out the last election where we lost our majorities in the House and Senate. Folks that may have sat out the last governor's race, they're not going to be sitting out in the future. They have engaged a whole bunch of people who are rightfully angry, rightfully scared, and frustrated. And this is all organic. I think the Attorney General of Virginia today tried to lay this at the feet of the quote unquote gun lobby, that they're ginning up all this opposition, false opposition, or whatever they try to phrase it.
Right.
But if he really thinks that, he could not be more wrong. This whole effort, I think, originated on social media, and it spread like wildfire, and it was completely organic and citizen driven. And the politicians, those of us who are going to be part of this process in Richmond, are just we're just going along for the ride with our constituents, because they are leading this charge.
Absolutely. You could not be more right about that, Delegate. And it does drive me crazy because, again, the gun control activists, they can't allow for a genuine grassroots pro-Second Amendment movement. It has to be directed from the gun lobby. But,
right.
Look, I can tell you, man, I've talked with Philip Van Cleve of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and they're doing great work in helping to, let folks know when these meetings are taking place. But they're having a hard time keeping up with everything that's going on. Yeah. Nobody can direct this right now, because this is taking off like wildfire, and it is so hyper local, as you say. This is a matter of neighbors talking to neighbors, one individual in one county seeing what's happened in another county, and it's again, is this really incredible organic movement. And it may turn into a new organized network of Second Amendment activists, but I think this is very, it's very unorganized at the moment. And again, that to me makes it even more amazing what we're seeing here. Listen, I don't want to let you go before I bring up something here that I think is also really important. And that is that Republicans and Second Amendment supporters in the state, it's not like we're just saying no to gun control. We have ideas that work, that will reduce crime. You introduced a bill this past summer that I was so thrilled to see you do this because it really does get to the heart of what's driving violent crime in places like Richmond and Petersburg, Virginia, by offering grant money to these cities to put programs in place for targeted enforcement against the most violent offenders, while also offering individuals who are in that gang lifestyle the opportunity and the means to change their life and to put down the guns and to stop shooting. This is a program that has been effective in cities around the country. We know that it works. It's not a left or a right policy position. And yet, when you introduced this bill, did you get, what was the response from Democratic lawmakers in Virginia?
I mostly got crickets from them. And really the bill is, you know, I'm telling you something you already know, your audience mostly already knows. I mean, the number of these firearms that the governor and Virginia Democrats are trying to ban now, or ban at least if we're just banning the sale or whatever the scheme is currently, to single out these specific types of firearms based on cosmetic aspects. You know, very few of those firearms are used in crime. I think the percentage of people that are killed in this country by blunt instruments far outweighs people that are killed by rifles of any kind, not to mention this specific kind of rifle. But they don't care about that. Their agenda goes beyond that, because we have as you said, a proven program that will target inner city violence, especially in the black community, where we see just families ripped apart, communities ripped apart constantly by violence in the inner city, and one that is proven to reduce crime, reduce recidivism, get people out of a certain lifestyle, give them hope, give them a chance to do something better with their lives by going after the truly bad guys, getting them off the street, giving other people an opportunity to change their decisions. They're not interested in that, and the reaction I got from even members of the Black Legislative Caucus was sort of crickets. I mean, you know, here's a chance to save lives in your community, make a change. This gun control agenda is far more important than that, and that's perfectly clear, and that makes me sad. It
makes me really sad too, because, you know, ultimately I think what's going to end up happening here, obviously I think these gun control laws, any that get put on the books, they're going to be challenged in court. But they are, you know, again, going back to New York State, 6 years after the SAFE Act's been put in effect, the vast majority of SAFE Act prosecutions are happening in two boroughs of New York City, the Bronx and Brooklyn. And a woman named Emily Jaffe from Slate magazine actually went and she sat in the gun court in Brooklyn for 2 months to look at who was being prosecuted for SAFE Act violations. She said 70% of them young black guys without previous criminal histories. And they're being charged with simply possessing a firearm without a license, which is now a 3.5-year felony in New York State. And I ultimately do believe that any of these gun control laws that get put on the books in the state of Virginia are going to be used disproportionately against young men of color, many of whom do not have violent criminal histories, and we're going to throw them in prison rather than, you know, this program that you just talked about, which is offering individuals who may be headed down the wrong path an opportunity to change their life and to turn their life around. And instead, again, what we're seeing from this new incoming majority is, no, we just want to put as many people as possible behind bars.
Yeah, no, it never let the facts or logic get in the way of a good narrative, I guess, if you are a progressive Democrat, and especially if you have an agenda. And frankly, the agenda fundamentally is that they just don't want citizens empowered with the kind of power that they have from the ability to protect themselves. And it's just a fundamental view of the world that they don't share with us. And they will stop at nothing to achieve that, and they will do it incrementally. and this is step one in Virginia, and it's a big step we're getting ready to take. So I love that my neighbors are pushing back, and I was happy to show up with them by the thousands, just be one of them in the crowd the other night. It was something to behold. It
really is. I've been to, I think, 8 different county meetings, and it's each and every time I get chills being there in the crowd. All right, last question for you, Delegate, and I'm going to get grief if I don't ask this question. There is right now in the incoming session a 10-vote Democrat majority in the House of Delegates, a 2-vote Democrat majority in the state Senate. Is there any possibility that we can flip a couple of these Democrats, maybe over on the Senate side in particular, rural lawmakers, to stand with the state's gun owners and in support of the right to keep and bear arms? Or do you think that these bad bills are going to become bad laws here really soon?
I don't know. I mean, I am not optimistic. Maybe the Senate has a better chance of that just because of their, the more narrow margin they have over there. There really are no centrist Democrats left in the Virginia legislature. I tried to warn the business community before this session. There are no pro-business Democrats left in the legislature. And the ones that represent rural areas are also sort of driven by the urban areas that they represent. If they're Democrats, it means they have a pretty concentrated urban area that they represent still. The urban-rural divide is sort of the divide between Republican and Democrat now. I do think there's a chance that there are enough aspects of some of this that it makes some folks uneasy, and it makes this hard. At least I can't tell you that we're going to get them at the end of the day, that they're going to be convinced, but maybe behind the scenes, the type of things the governor's been doing to try to maneuver this into at least in his mind, a more centrist approach, as opposed to just confiscation, talking about registration. But that's still not going to be good enough for gun owners, and it shouldn't be. But that is indicative, I think, of the fact that they are at least listening, and maybe maybe we catch some folks in the Senate, maybe even in the House, who just are not willing to go that far. But it's tough for me to tell you, we're gonna be able to stop this. I'm extremely concerned.
Elections have consequences. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I don't want you to blow sunshine up anyone's rear end here. I mean, we need to know what we're facing, and that's what I've been saying too. That as great as this movement is in terms of these Second Amendment sanctuaries, it is a defensive maneuver. And it's not a suit of armor for the Second Amendment. We are facing some really dark days ahead, I think, and hopefully we've got again this grassroots effort that is going to continue to grow. But I think we're in for the thick of it here over the next couple of months. Delegate Gilbert, listen, thank you again for your time, sir. I really do appreciate it, and I hope we get a chance to continue the conversation here over the upcoming legislative session.
Okay. I hope we'll see you in Richmond on Lobby Day.
We will.
That'd be great.
I will be there. Thank you, sir.
Okay, brother.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Delegate C. Todd Gilbert joining us here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company.